everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to dig a little deeper into what personal storytelling is and what it isn't. Okay, so personal storytelling transforms basic communication into an art form for bringing our audience, our listeners, into our world as we reveal the essence of who we are. It's designed to be intimate, to be engaging and entertaining, and also to emotionally resonate with our audience, with the listeners. It requires us to share our feelings, our thoughts, our emotions, which means we have to open up and we have to be vulnerable. It's who level relationship communication. So you have two different types of communication. You have what content level communication, which really is the vast majority of communication that we engage in day to day. And that's communicating what we need, why we need it, how we need it. It's communicating information, facts, data, communicating information, direction, guidance. That's all what level communication. Who level communication is relationship, person-oriented communication that's designed to communicate who we are. So to reveal our thoughts, our feelings, our emotion, our beliefs, right? That's where we get the heart-to-heart communication. So that is the essence of what personal storytelling is. So it's designed to develop and build emotional connection and understanding between the storyteller and the listener. You are about to discover that I'm extremely passionate about this. Okay. In personal storytelling, we leverage what happened to us to communicate who we are. What you're communicating through a personal story is the understanding, the meaning, and the value of what happened. So that means that retelling and recounting what happened to you is not personal storytelling. Yes, you might be really good at retelling and recounting what happened to you. You might have people laughing at the edge of their seat and really engage in what you're sharing. But you're not personal storytelling. You are simply recounting and retelling what happened. To get to sharing a personal story, you have to process what happened to get to the meaning, the understanding, and the value of what happened to you, because that's what you're communicating, and that is how you're revealing who you are. So there's a process to doing that. And as you go through the process and you put all the pieces together, then there's certain things you are going to do as communicating through a personal story. You're going to orient your audience. You're going to have the understanding that, you know what, for people to get immersed into my story, into this event that happened to me, they need to know a little bit about the what, where, and when. That's the setting. You're going to introduce them to the situation, perhaps a little bit about what happened beforehand, so they start getting immersed into that experience and they get a clear understanding of who you are as the main character as you're going into this situation. So that's the massive, huge component that makes personal storytelling different from just recounting and retelling what happened, is that you get how you have to introduce yourself as the main character of your story. That means that you also get that the entire time you're sharing the story, you need to keep your audience immersed into the story from your perspective. That's why you're constantly sharing your thoughts, your feelings, and your emotion. You're not just saying a bunch of information and leaving it up to the audience to make assumption about what that means and why it's relevant. You're letting them know. It's weaved in as you're sharing what happened. But again, it's not blow by blow. It's not just retelling everything that happened. This is why people are like, you lose their attention, because they don't get what's the point, what's the meaning, where's this going. As a personal storyteller, because you've processed what happened, you know what to leave out based on the meaning that you're communicating. So you can have one event, an experience that you've had, and maybe that experience has 3 different personal stories out of it, depending, again, on what you want to communicate. But the truth is, certain things are going to be left out because they're not relevant. Because a personal story has a tempo, and you want to maintain that. You want to keep your audience immersed into the experience and engage with what happened. So there's a lot that goes into sharing a personal story that is vastly different from recounting and retelling what happened to you. Okay, I'm more relaxed now. You'll come to learn why I'm so passionate about personal storytelling as I get into the benefits and, what an incredible transformative journey it is to become a personal storyteller, because it's not just a communication tool, it's also a personal development tool. But we'll get into that in future videos. What I want to end this video with is highlight a point that I drove multiple times. I kept saying that you're going to have in personal storytelling, you're going to have to share your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. I want to highlight and help you understand through an example how, unless you're communicating your thoughts, feelings, and emotion, you're not really saying anything about who you are. What you do is you create gaps for people to make assumptions. So we have to fill those gaps with our thoughts, feelings, and emotion so that people don't just make assumptions. So I'm going to give you an example. Okay, it starts with this, right? So I'm telling you an event. I moved to a new city last year for a job opportunity. At first, it felt like a big adjustment, not knowing anyone and needing to get used to a new environment. So I just told you something that happened. What did I communicate to you? So just take time to pause to think, what did she communicate? So I said, I moved to a new city last year for a job opportunity. At first, it felt like a big adjustment, not knowing anyone and needing to get used to a new environment, right? So I shared something that happened. Okay, now let's get into what it sounds like, what it communicates once we add our thoughts, feelings, and emotion. So here we go. Telling the event with personal meaning and emotion. I moved to a new city last year for a job opportunity, and I remember how overwhelming it felt. I was excited about the new role, but terrified of starting fresh in a place where I didn't know a soul. It was lonely at first, especially on weekends, when I realized I didn't have anyone to call or meet up with. But that loneliness pushed me out to get out there and join some local groups. Looking back, it was one of the most challenging things I've ever done, but it taught me resilience, and now I feel proud of the community I built for myself. So in that scenario, you learn a lot more about me based on what happened, because I shared with you how it made me feel, how I reacted and behaved because of it. So now let's go into a second scenario, a second version of that same scenario. I moved to a new city last year for a job opportunity. I felt like an explorer. There was this thrill in walking down unknown streets, trying out local cafes, and embracing the quiet of being alone in a new place. I could feel this sense of freedom I hadn't experienced before. No routines, no expectations. Each day felt like an adventure, and I enjoyed the solitude, using that time to get to know myself better. Meeting new people became a fun challenge, and I loved the variety of personalities I encountered. Moving here has been one of the most exciting and liberating experiences of my life. You just met a completely different person in that second example than from the first example. And now you're realizing that from the statement, you didn't meet anyone. You just received information, and what ended up out of that information, you started interpreting what that meant. You stepped into that statement and made assumptions that, based on your experiences, your emotions, and your beliefs, that that statement that that person said had a meaning. Now, it's not your fault that you did that. It's human nature. If people don't tell us what they thought about things, if they don't tell us how that made them feel, we're going to assume that they thought what we thought. We're going to assume that they felt what we feel about it. And this is why there's so much miscommunication and misunderstanding, because we leave all of these gaps for our listeners, for our audience, to make all of these assumptions. So in personal storytelling, you learn to share your thoughts, your feelings, and emotion. And obviously, you have to use that to make it a personal story. But it's also about you just learning to communicate your thoughts, your feeling, and emotions. That unless you do that, you did not completely communicate. You left a bunch of gaps for people to make assumptions. And that's why when you're recounting and retelling what happened to you, you're leaving those gaps for people to make assumption. When you're stringing facts and information together, you're creating all of these gaps for people to make assumptions. Because something means something to you, it doesn't mean that it has the same meaning to the other person. And you can't leave it up to chance that what you're saying is being heard the way that you mean it. You have to communicate it the way that you want it to be heard. Hopefully those examples help. I'll be providing a lot more of those types of examples, and I'm going to get a lot more into what assumptions are, where they come from, and why we make them. They're part of human nature. But here's a little challenge for you, right? Till the next video. Pay closer attention to what people are saying and start asking yourself, am I assuming that's what they mean? Or did they actually tell me that that's what they mean? Did they tell me that's how it felt? That's what they were thinking? Or am I assuming that I would have thought that? So of course, that's what they thought. And then you didn't ask any questions because you just made the assumption. The brain naturally jumps to conclusion and makes assumption. So we have to train ourselves to step out of that. And part of that is starting to really pay attention to what we communicate and start paying attention to what others are communicating. And because it's kind of human nature to kind of point the finger to other people and say, hey, you didn't do this, and that's why I don't know that that's what you meant. I'm giving you carte blanche to do that right now, to really listen, again, to someone and ask yourself, what did they really say? Do I understand what they think and feel about this? And leave some comments and let me know how this exercise went for you.